to it. One of the things I like about it is it's super low profile. What I've been using lately is this felt. The felt got some rice, some potatoes, some broccoli. So what I did was I took my alcohol bottle, I just put it in this guy. You could step on it, and I would doubt that anything would happen to it at all. I'm gonna add my Parmesan cheese sauce to this now. All right. Well, today I'm gonna do a little review and a little trick on using the Flat Cat stove from Flat Cat Designs. And got my pot cozy here with all my stuff inside of it. A little makeshift lid that I use. My meal, my topping, and then here's all the stove stuff. So I have the Flat Cat stove, and the stove has got a really low profile to it. One of the things I like about it is it's super low profile, which makes it so that the windscreen can be shorter, and that allows the windscreen to fit inside of the pot. Just barely, but it does. So that works out really well. One of the problems with alcohol stoves, though, is they don't work well in the snow and in cold temperatures. So it's about 20-something degrees right now, 22 degrees out Fahrenheit. And so it's nice and cold, definitely below freezing. Type of conditions that alcohol stoves don't usually work very well in. So what I did is I did some trials, and I found that really the stove just needs to be insulated. That's the big thing. If you put the stove right on the snow, then as it heats up, it's gonna cool down the stove. As the stove heats up, it's gonna melt the snow, and the snow is gonna keep this thing cold. Doesn't work very well. Use the heat shield, and it's not bad. It certainly it does better than without anything, but it's not good enough to really heat things. It just takes a long time to heat up a pot or a cup of water. So the heat shield's great, but what I've been using lately is this felt. The felt does great. But when you just place the felt right in the snow and it starts to melt a little bit, those fibers grab onto the snow and they stick. So one more piece of really lightweight aluminum. Flatten out a spot here. So just put a little piece of aluminum foil there, and that keeps this felt from sticking to the snow. And then I sandwich that felt with my reflector so that the heat still is coming up as much as possible. And then I put the stove right on top of that reflector. The Flat Cat gear, they have this windscreen that's pretty cool. It's got a little snap closure system. I guess I've used mine a little bit too much because the snap closure system isn't really working for me anymore. But I just threw a rubber band around it. Works just fine. Holds in place still. But then it's got these snaps to it, and you just clip in the snaps, and that holds the unit together in one piece. So you got a windscreen there. This little pin is for a pot support inside. You can see it's got this little lip there. So when I put my pot in, the handles will rest on this side, and the pot rests on that pin on the opposite side. And that keeps it nice and level, and just the right height above the stove. So I'm going to be cooking today a rice dish. I've got some rice, some potatoes, some broccoli in here, and I'm going to rehydrate that right inside the pot. My technique is to put my food into the pot and then add the water. And you can let that sit for a while if you want to. Mix it up in there. Let that sit there if you want to for a while, and that'll help to start the rehydration process. That's just cold water. While I get the stove set up, you can let that just go a little bit to rehydrate. Then I'm going to pour some fuel into this. I've got 1 cup of water in there, and so I need just a little bit more than 1/4 of an ounce of fuel. One thing I have found for working with the alcohol stove in the winter time is that if you let your alcohol cool down, it just doesn't want to light. So what I did was I took my alcohol bottle, I just put it in my jacket pocket, and now it's plenty warm. Shouldn't be a problem for lighting up. Any extra fuel, one of the things I like about the Flat Cat stove is any extra fuel that I don't use to boil it, I can pour it off. I can snuff the stove out pretty easy. I'll show you how to do that at the end. Okay, so that's all set and ready to go. And now I'll light the stove. And because of this low profile it has, it's easier to get the flame down into the alcohol. And that's going right away. When I tried to do this when it was cold alcohol, it did not want to light. It was really hard to get it to light. Alright, I took my food, put it on top here, and start my timer. Alright, close to 4 minutes here, and the edges are starting to boil. The whole hasn't started boiling yet, but it's definitely heating up nicely here. Let it go for a couple more minutes. Okay, about 5 minutes in. Really close to a rolling boil now. Edges are really boiling. Alright, that's it. We just finished boiling, or just got a good boil out of it. That was at almost maybe 5:45 or so. And the stove is just about out, so I'm going to let it keep going out. Alright, that just went out. Get my pot cozy out here. I like these handles because you can just turn them back on themselves. And we'll let that set up for about 10 minutes. And one of the things I love about the stove is that you can snuff it out even when it's still got too much fuel in it. So we got extra fuel in here. Put the pot away, but I will take that out, and you can use the pot to snuff it because there's no side ports on the stove. You can just put the pot right on top of the stove for a couple seconds, and that puts the stove out. Now, the stove is totally out, and I can put this in its cozy, let it do its thing, and then I let this cool down. Let the stove cool down before I pour off the reserve fuel. Just put the stove right on the snow, and that cooled it right down within maybe 30-45 seconds. It was cool enough to touch. So now, because again you don't have those holes in the side, you just have these little tiny little slots, and you have a wide opening on this measuring cup that the stove comes with. You can just pour the fuel right back into the cup, and this then will get poured back into my little fuel bottle, and I'm all set to go. So I've really enjoyed using this stove. All in all, it's been a huge success for me. As you can see, here's the felt, and a little bit of it gets stuck in the snow wherever that aluminum foil wasn't, but does a great job. Really well. Very tough, sturdy stove. It feels, I don't know if it is actually stainless steel or not, but it feels like it's stainless steel. So it's a little heavy. It's 1.3 ounces just for the stove part, but it's also really durable. One of the things I worried about with the Simmercat stoves is that if you were to step on it accidentally, it's gone. There's nothing left of it. This guy, you could step on it, and I would doubt that anything would happen to it at all. Even if it did a little bit, it would probably still work fine. So It's a tough little stove. I still wouldn't recommend stepping on it, of course, but I think it's pretty tough. The windscreen design is great. I really like that I can have a windscreen and a pot support all in one. I really like that design idea. The only thing I'm not super happy about is that I've only had this for about a month. Now, admittedly, I've been testing it and using it a ton, but the snaps are already starting to go on me. They are not holding super well, especially this outer one. It's one that holds this together when it's under a lot of tension. This does not hold that tension very well anymore. You can see it's just popping right off. So that's the only part that's a bummer, but it's not a huge deal. I just got a rubber band that I put on the fuel cup, and I wrap that around the stove, around the screen, to keep it in place. And then to store, what I've been doing is this little pin. I have almost lost the pin, especially when it gets dark, so I have been making sure I stick that pin in here and get it tucked in so that it doesn't fall out. And I like to have it so that the wider part, or the thicker part, is inside of the windscreen. That way it fits better in the pot when I put it back in. So that is the Flat-Cat stove and the Bobcat stove system. This whole system is called the Bobcat stove system, and it fits the 1.6 liter Toaks pot. That's the one I used today. This pot that I have in here is a 1.6 liter Toaks, and then you can also use, that's a titanium pot, but also the Evernew. I think it's 1.3 liter that it fits perfectly into as well. They both work great. So let's see what my meal looks like now. Things have been in here for a little bit. Looks pretty good. I've got a little bit of extra water, which I want, and the rice looks pretty well cooked. So now what I'm going to do, and as you can see, it's steaming. This pot cozy is a great pot cozy. I'm going to add my Parmesan cheese sauce to this now, and mix that in well. And it should, if I have my quantities right, it should turn into a really nice creamed rice consistency, cheese sauce. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Yeah, it looks really good. Well, this is a homemade cheese sauce recipe I got online, and it's really just a bunch of powdered milk and Parmesan cheese with some seasonings in it. And so then that recipe is on my blog at Backcountry Kitchen, and I'll put a link in the video here so you can have that too. There's that. Let me get it out in my little cup so it shows up a little better. This is a half cup of rice, quarter cup of veggies, and a quarter cup of the cheese sauce. That's all it is. A nice simple meal to have when you're out in the backcountry. And this should be pretty filling because of that, because of the amount of cheese that's in here. The Parmesan, I use a shelf-stable Parmesan cheese, so it could keep for a long time out in the backcountry. And there's my rice with broccoli, potatoes, and cheese sauce, Parmesan cheese sauce. Oh yeah, that's good. Very nice. All right, well, go check out my blog and see about the recipe, and have a great one. Enjoy your time outdoors.